Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales, although a very special version of it because we are doing the first Hallowstream of 2024. Now, if you've never been here before, this will be a weird introduction because we're not normally like this, but I think you could probably put it together with context since every other channel does the same thing. I read old folklore and fairy tales here every Tuesday night, live, with some sound effects and music and whatever else. But in the month of October, we do sort of macabre, grim, spooky, ghost-oriented kind of folklore, and sometimes even short stories that aren't, specifically folklore. I'm going to turn the music down just a bit. We're going to read one story tonight. It's a Norwegian traditional folk tale called The Parson's Mother that was collected originally, well, it was collected by a few people, but originally sort of put together and put out by Bjornson and Moe. And our translation tonight is going to come to us from Simon Roy Hughes. And I mentioned this at the top because you'll notice that there's a pinned comment in the chat, or if you're not watching this live, a pinned comment down below of Simon Roy Hughes' complete collection. And it is truly the only complete English translated collection of Asbjornsen and Moe collection of folklore, Norwegian folklore. And this tale comes from that. If you haven't already, I highly recommend that you purchase it. The link will take you to the two different versions. Some are just the stories, others are the annotated version. Now, I'm not sponsored, but I am, well, I don't want to be presumptuous, but at least acquainted with Simon Roy Hughes. And it was actually him who recommended this story to me, this and another one. When I was asking about, like, what are some good things for Halloween. So I'm in contact with him and so on. And also he is an independent translator who has self-published that book. So all the proceeds go towards furthering sort of folklore in general, really. Now, if you are here live, one of these directions, I forget which one, there is a live chat on YouTube that you can join that's already have several people in it. And I'm afraid I'm going to ignore you a little more than I normally do tonight, to shock and awe, because I do have actually quite a bit to get through, even before we get to the story. But I think the story's worth sticking around for. If you're not watching this live, though, good news, if you care nothing about the context or content warnings or anything like that, you just want to get to a story, down in the description below, there will be timestamps that'll take you directly to the start of the story. That's up to you. If you're here live and you don't care about any of that stuff, I don't know, go to the bathroom or something. I'll be about 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, so GS says, Rory, your head grew with a new computer. I'm just a little more zoomed in to try and capture some of the spooky set dressing, that's all. Anyways, I see that Witchery, Jump Store, GS, Tammy Morelli, Zombie Wolf, Lizzie Rose are all here, and it's great to see you folks again. If you're lurking, it's also great that you're here. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoy what we have tonight. Yeah, let me get to a little bit of discussion. I have sort of a few things I need to do. I need to sort of introduce you to the month of Hallowstreams, introduce you to the concept of some content warnings, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the modern concept of horror as a genre and how it relates to the story tonight, but also how it relates to the stories in general, so that I can sort of set some expectations about what the month is going to be like, if you haven't been through a Hallowstream on this channel before. Okay. Welcome to our first Hallowstream of 2024. In the month of October, both of Varietal's shows, this being one of them, the other one being where we play solo tabletop RPGs, become sort of focused on the grim and macabre. Tonight we're reading folklore, and for many of my regulars, actually, my Hallowstreams were kind of where I caught their attention, so maybe you want to stick around and hear them. They often, at least one of them does pretty well in the algorithm by my measures, not by anybody else's, really. We're talking like sub 1,000 views. But they are the ones that are generally best received, I will say, just overall. So I hope if you are new and you're trying this out that you will, and if you like to be read old stories, you'll enjoy your time here. So some general info. In general, my streams aren't really targeted at kids, but I would say for the most part, it wouldn't be the end of the world if a kid heard them. These ones are different. Hallowstreams are the most adult-rated episodes I do, and this year is no different. In fact, it might be the most gruesome. So the month in general, all the shows of this month come with the big fat content warning that we'll be dealing with things like murder and gruesome descriptions and generally scary and unsettling and uncanny stuff. I am actually going to zoom out just slightly. This is not a month for children in general. That said, on the flip side, if you are a modern horror buff, let's lower those expectations a bit, because you will probably find a lot of this pretty tame. So I don't want to oversell it. We obviously, in the last 50 years, have really ratcheted up horror as a genre. That said, though, some of it is probably more intense than you're anticipating if you have a particular understanding of what folklore is, like from Grimm Brothers or whatever. It's a little more adult and grim than that. But all I'm trying to say here is, if either you're regular or somebody who's curious about these streams, if I stumble across a topic that you find a bit too much, don't worry about hurting my feelings or anything. Just don't watch the stream. Some of these, they really don't pull many punches if it's a topic that disturbs you. And I'm not here to disturb anyone, really. At least not in a way that isn't fun. So, with that, on to the idea of horror as a genre. And really genre in general and how it relates to folklore, which sounds boring up front, and maybe it is, but I think it is important for this month. At the risk of ruffling feathers of certain strands of literary criticism, genre is largely a modern marketing thing. It's not that genre doesn't predate that application, nor is it that genre can carry no other more substantial value when reading something or interpreting something. It's just that genre, as we understand it now, is largely used to target portions of the public and set their expectations about what the movie and book will be like. Tonight's when we look at folklore, though, what we won't really see and what we don't usually see is really clear lines of genre. There are things that fit more with one or another, sometimes two, but folklore isn't really structured around genre because it wasn't trying to be sold or set expectations. They're just tales, right? So tonight's story is a good example of that. By all measures, frankly, it's a horror story of sorts. I mean, it's at least very gruesome. But it acts more as a comedy in its actual delivery and structure and purpose, really. So we can call it a dark comedy or a horror comedy. Other stories we will read this month might contain some of the grimmest, most gruesome scenes I've ever seen, even in a horror book. But the story itself will clearly perceive of itself as like a children's adventure or something. So coming into the Hallowstreams, it is important to understand, if you're a fan of horror in general, that many of these horror stories that I sequester into the month of October were not really created to specifically scare or disturb you like a modern genre horror story would. Many of them are really quite cheery in their descriptions of cannibalism and undead murder and body horror, which honestly adds kind of an element of weird creepiness to it. And it bears on us to ponder the implications of what we are being described to understand why I included that tale into Hallowstream. Because sometimes it slips by you in cheery language, and then you go, wait a minute, did they just eat a child? So with all the expectations shaped, let's start a month of Hallowstreams with this Norwegian tale of a grandma that just wouldn't die. Or would she? Zombie Wolf says, Rory, I'm only here to disturb people. Witchery says, Rory is a teddy bear. Ah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to have a drink of water, and then we're going to read a story. It's going to be a little shorter tonight. It's a longer story, but we're only reading the one story. But that's not for a lack of content. I just kind of wanted to cluster light content together, and this one sort of stood alone. All right. What's moodier than some rain and some wind? Also, let me know if the audio levels are wrong. I noticed that there was some cracking at the top end when I rewatched my last stream on this new computer, so I've fussed with the audio a bit. Oh yeah, it's International Coffee Day. Nom nom nom. I'm actually going to restart our playlist. Our tale tonight is called The Parson's Mother. What an innocent title. It is a dark comedy, but quite dark, frankly. And it comes to us from the collection from Simon Roy Hughes, translated by Simon Roy Hughes, but the collection put together by S. Bjornson and Moe, a rather famous 19th century collectors of Norwegian folklore. And if you want to read this tale and other tales like it for yourself, all the English translated works of Bjornson and Moe has been completed by Simon Roy Hughes and is in the pinned comment of our chat, if you want to follow the link there, or the pinned comment below if we're no longer live. There was once upon a time a parson and a sexton, as in many villages. The sexton was rich, but the parson was poor, and despite his being a learned man, he never knew what to do. The sexton always knew what to do in every situation. However, he had a head for business, like a crow and a magpie. Though what they define as business is a little sketchy. They had a custom of holding an autumn sausage fest at the time of slaughter in that village. The parson did not think he could afford to hold it, though, but he did not know how he could avoid it either. So he went to the sexton to ask him for advice. "That's not a matter at all, Father," said the sexton. "Just say that thieves have come along the livestock path and have left with your pigs, and then you'll avoid the whole sausage fest." Now the parson thought that this was good advice, but during the night the sexton himself broke into the pigsty and stole all the parson's pigs. And when the parson discovered that the pigs had been stolen and were gone, he did not know what to do but send for the sexton, who did not keep him waiting. "What is going on now, Father?" he said when he came in to the parson. "Oh, God comfort and help me, an unfortunate man, said the parson. Now what we spoke of has happened. And what was that? Asked the sexton. My pigs have been stolen away, said the parson. Well, said the sexton, in that case you'll get out of the sausage fest, as I said. No, not like that. It really is true. There have been thieves here. They've broken into my pigsty and have taken my pigs. Really stolen them away, said the parson. That's right, father, said the sexton. Keep saying it, just like you're telling it, so folk believe it to be true. But then you'll get out of holding the sausage fest. No, listen now. It is truthfully true what I am saying. It's not some fancy, said the parson. There have been thieves here. Yes, God bless you, father. You need not swear to it. I know well enough. We are not going to have a sausage fest. I hear you, said the sexton, carrying on, and no matter how the parson told him and assured him, and he received no other advice from the sexton, and he received no other answer either. A while afterwards, the parson began to consider how the sexton could be so rich. Even though his incomes were small, and how he himself was poor, and he took in much more in tithes and offerings of all that was good, he could by no means comprehend it, but he began to think both one thing and another. And perhaps he'd heard something about the sexton eating pork more often than other folk. Well, that was enough. He had great desire to discover the truth of it. So he found that he should tell the sexton that he had to travel away, and he would leave his money chest with him in the meantime. It's easy to understand that there was no money in the chest. Parson's old mother, crusty, hunchbacked woman, lay down in it alone, gnawing on a crust of cheese. She should take care, he felt, to listen and see whether the sexton had a money poppet, or how things were connected together with his riches. So the chest was put in the parlor. In the evening, the sexton's children began to scream for food. Do you have time to wait for me to make something? Said the sexton's wife. Can we not have some of the parson's pork then, mother? The children screamed. And when the parson's mother heard this, she opened the chest a crack and looked out for the pork. The sexton marked that well, but he affected to have neither heard nor seen anything. Marked it well, I think, is a term most of my audience would know, but in case you didn't, it means he noticed that she cracked the thing. But during the night, while the others slept, he got up and took with him an axe and lifted the lid of the chest and struck the parson's mother on her forehead with the heel of the axe, and then shoved the crust of cheese down her throat and closed the lid again. Just want everyone to absorb what just happened, because it takes a real turn here. This is the left turn. The following day, the parson came and said that he had had second thoughts. He could postpone his journey until another week. He took the chest with him, and when he had properly come home, he opened it up and asked, Mother, did you notice anything about whether the sexton has taken my pork? His mother did not reply. but lay gaping with the cheese crust in her mouth. And the parson, he grew sorrowful, for he thought she had suffocated in the chest because he had not drilled any holes that she could breathe through. And he had also forgotten to give her anything to drink. And now he had to send for the sexton again and asked him if he would bury his mother quietly. "Has she been ill-used, then?" asked the sexton. "No, she hasn't." He thought it so sorrowful that she had died so suddenly, and he thought he would therefore rather give him $10 if the sexton would bury her quietly. You know what I like about the art? It doesn't say this in the story, but I like the art that it implies that he didn't even take his mother out of the chest. Actually, I think it might say that later. Puts it in a sack, anyways. Which is the worst cover ever. That chest I left at your house, turns out my dead mother's in it. Well, if he got $10, then he would bury her. But he said to himself, "Now, you shall be repaid for the prank you thought of playing me." Did killing his mother not repay him? So he took the woman, put her in a sack, and went off with her. And on his way home, he saw that a merchant lay sleeping on a sunny bank with a large merchant's chest lying beside him. The sexton was not slow in opening the chest and pressing the parson's mother down into it. A while afterwards, the merchant came to the sexton's farm and asked if he could do some trade. "No," said the sexton, "I have nothing to buy with. Although the parson is rich, you should go to him." He went to the parson then, and the parson was soon ready to trade, but when the merchant opened his merchant's chest, they saw the dead woman that was the parson's mother, and they were so afraid that they almost lost their wits and their understanding, the both of them, though for slightly different reasons. The parson did not know what to do other than send for the sexton again. "But how did you do? Did you not bury mother?" asked the parson when the sexton had come in. "Of course I buried her," replied the sexton. But she has probably been ill-used, since she is going a-haunting like this." "No, she wasn't," said the parson, but he took heed of it, and said he thought it unfortunate that she should haunt. He would give the sexton $20 if he would bury her in all quietness, and yes, the sexton would do that. And so he put the woman in a sack and went off with her on his back again. Now he had heard that they should bake a cake at the parsonage the following day, and so he went back with the woman, or her body anyways, during the night, and stole into the baking cabin. And early in the morning, when the woman folk came in to bake, the parson's mother stood there upright with both fists in the dough trough as if she were kneading in her death. They screamed beyond measure, and were so afraid that they lost their wits and their understanding, and the housekeeper ran straight into the parson's bedchamber and screamed and cried, and they dared touch neither the flour, nor the dough, until he came and conjured the old woman away, no matter if she should go up or down. The parson did not know what to do before he spoke to the sexton. "But listen, how did you do? Did you not bury mother?" said the parson when the sexton had come in. "Of course I buried her," said the sexton. "But now she stands out there kneading dough in the baking cabin," said the parson. Well, she's obviously been ill-used, and she walks and carries on and haunts so," said the sexton. said the parson, shuddering, and then he thought it unfortunate for his mother to be walking and carrying on and haunting so when she should very well be dead. He would rather give the sexton $30 to bury her quietly, and the sexton said she must have been ill-used, but that it was the same to him. If he got $30, then he would surely bury her. Yes, he got the money, and off he set with the woman again. But during the night he took her with him into the barn at the parsonage and cut the head off the parson's big bull. As if he's not done enough. And when he'd done that, he set the bull up in the stall and sat the woman on its back and put a scythe in her hand as if she had killed it. You see what I mean by, like, it's described as like a fun folklore story, but this is some like serial killer stuff. In the morning, when the milkmaid saw this spectacle, she was so appalled that she went straight into the parson's bedchamber and screamed, "Father, father, our old mother is sitting on the big bull in the barn. She has sliced him to death. I dare not go in there to feed the cows before father goes with me and conjures her away." The parson would not believe it, but when he came down to the barn, he saw it was true. And then he did not know what to do before he went and sent for the sexton. "Now listen, how did you do? Did you not bury my mother?" said the parson. And when the sexton had come in, he said, "Yes, God preserve me, I buried her." It's an appropriate reference, Zombie Wolf. "But now she sits on the big bull and has sliced it to death," said the parson. "Ah, she must have been ill-used, since she carries on and haunts so," said the sexton. Said the parson, shuddering, and then he said he thought it unfortunate that she should carry on and haunt so. He'd rather give the sexton $40 to bury her in all quietness. The sexton insisted that she must have been ill-used, but when he got $40, then he would bury her, both well and good, and so he put the woman in the sack and threw it over her shoulder and set off again. The following day, the parson was to travel on parish business, and the sexton should go with him, for afterwards they should go to the annex parish, and the parson readied himself in the evening and set off early in the morning before the light. And on his way he dropped in to the sexton. He rode on a nursing mare, and he had not noticed in the darkness that the foal had followed along, and now he wanted it stabled at the sexton's. "Oh yes, that would be possible," said the sexton, taking the foal. And he bade his farm boy to stable it, but at the same time he whispered in his ear, the ear of the farm boy, so the farm boy's in on this now, that he should put the great dragoon's saber in the parson's mother's hand, tie her fast on the foal, and release it when they come a little way from the house, and when the parson's nursing mare began to whinny. And when he had said this, he mounted his horse and rode across the field to the parson, and he had not reached him before the nursing mare began to bray and carry on, and as it missed its foal, of course, straightway the foal brayed back, for it missed her, and it came charging with the woman's corpse, holding up a saber on its back, and so she lolled wildly from side to side. And when the parson saw this, he was so afraid that he screamed in terror, and spared neither crop nor spurs in getting away. The parson did not know what to do, and he begged and pleaded the sexton, or blessed rather, the sexton, that he should see her into the ground. "No," said the sexton, "your mother has been ill-used, or she wouldn't carry on with such carrying on and haunting continue. She has no peace, and I'll not bury her before father tells how everything hangs together." "Very well, then," screamed the parson, "I'll give you $50 and the mare and the foal beside, if you will only leave me in peace and get her into the ground, both quickly and well." But it has never been asked how things did or didn't turn out. No matter whether the sexton buried her, she still rides after the parson. Whether Sexton was hanged or beaten, whether he lived well and good like other big pranksters. Prankster? Like, is this a prank? Perhaps you may ask as you go from village to village, asking after the parson who never knew what to do, and the sexton who always knew what to do in every situation. Jump Store says $40 back then. It was like a small fortune. Yeah, like $1 was a small fortune. He got a lot of money for this. Lizzie Rose says the parson just needs to bury her himself. Yeah. At what point do you just give up here? There's, I realized halfway through that I have read this twice now before I got here, so 3 times now. But I realized that mother might have just been a passing phrase for wife. She's described as old, but then later, I don't know. I just assumed it was his mother, but I think it might have been his wife. It is a funny story. It has a sense of humor. But the longer you think about it, the more you're like, I think I just read a man who is clearly deeply disturbed doing horrible things to a person who barely, like, what exactly, I guess, let me just say what the obvious point I think of the story is. The obvious point of the story is to set this contrast between somebody who is clever and somebody who is rich. And that being rich didn't mean you're clever, and the clever can get rich off the stupid rich. I get that that's at least part of the point. However, the way it actually plays out is a man who barely did anything wrong. He asked his, helper how to get out of a sausage fest. Remember that? And the answer he got was a trick to steal all of his pigs. And when he became suspicious that his person stole his pigs, he tried to collect some evidence, got caught doing it, and then was utterly ruined and terrified for weeks, as far as I can tell. Days at least, perhaps without end. And it seems like at the end they try to give like a moral dynamic to it, where it seems like what he's trying to get the parson to do is admit that he was spying on him, but like admit that he was spying on him, and then he has to explain, like, well, yeah, but you stole all my pigs, didn't you? Anyways, yeah, GSO is just an adorable little prank. It's a psychotic set of pranks. It is also probably the softest story that I'm going to read. I thought I would ease us in with a bit of dark comedy. One thing I will say is that the second story in this particular package, which is also concerns a parson, is one of the ones we probably won't be reading this month, but I had intended to read this month. We will be reading it a little bit later because it belongs to another topic, and it is... I just want to read very briefly the footnotes on it, because it was originally not included in Asbjornsen's collection. This tale has been printed but twice before, initially in, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, and this other place. He tells that this is the original collector. He tells that it has been called The Secret Tale. This is the one we didn't read. And considered an abominable tale by reason of its subject matter. The first conservative of Norway's National Gallagher said the tale was repulsive, a tale which fortunately subsequently disappears again for good. And as a result, as Bjornson and Moe didn't even include it in the final edition of their collection, but Simon Roy Hughes, in the name of completeness, did. And that's a story we'll be reading next month. I happen to agree with them that I don't think it really has any artistic merit, but it is at least interesting in other ways. Okay, well, that's the only story we're reading tonight. Zombie Wolf indeed, it is time to post a trivia. Yeah, like I said, it's part of the reason it's a little shorter today is because all of this stream changes and intro changes and stuff, well, they are the same ones from last year. All of them take a while to set up, especially on a new computer. So I didn't have as much time today to play around with it. Zombie Wolf's Random Trivia says, before candy became a traditional Halloween food, barmbrack was the food associated with, I always forget how to pronounce this. It's the Irish name for the holiday that would become Halloween. Samhain? Semen? No matter how many times I hear it, I will always forget. I'm embarrassed. FYI, Bambrack is speckled fruit bread that contains sultanas, raisins, etc. That sounds very good. Tammy says, thank you, Rory, in the stream. See you on Thursday. Sweet dreams. Well, yeah, I'm sorry you're having a bit of a rough time there. Well, more than a bit, Tammy. Hopefully things feel better. I believe I promised Genera that we were doing Samhain. See, I'm always way off. I believed I promised Genera that we'd be doing the Drawing the Plants one, and that one actually does have some horror undertones to it. It is based on a movie that is more like philosophical sci-fi, but definitely kind of functions as horror as well. Called Absolution? Is that the name of it? No. Annihilation, I think is what it's called. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, we'll probably still be doing that on Thursday, because I said I would. But after that, we will be getting into some solo tabletop RPGs on the following Thursdays. You know, based around things like haunted houses and stuff like that. Yeah, I understood, Lizzie Rose, that you were referencing the word. I'm still not confident on how to say it. I may just look it up and hear it. Sow, like a female pig. Sowen. I mean, the problem is, of course, that it's a completely different language but anyways, being printed in a language that I understand a certain way, but it's just pronounced very differently. Rhymes with a cow. Sow. All right. Anyways. Oh, we're talking about who drank wine? Everyone drank wine. For a few reasons. Not the least of which being, as I mentioned before, really weak ales, more maybe than wine, were sanitary. It was water that wouldn't make you sick. I will forget this, but Lizzie, hopefully you'll be here to save me. All right, well, the outro is different as well. Not music, per se. But it has its own surprises, if you are the type to care about that. As for me, I will keep the fire going. You have yourself a good sleep. And I guess don't PO a sexton.